Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into the channel. I'm here with John, and today we're going to talk about making the most of your PT degree. John, tell us a little bit about your background, PT and non-PT related.
Well, actually, first off, thanks so much for having me. Really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to chatting today. But yeah, my name is John Schaefer. I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm originally from Minnesota. And then for PT school, I actually stuck around the Midwest. I went to St. Louis University. They've got kind of a unique program where it's a 3+3 program. So a lot of students will ask me questions about the GRE, things like that. I didn't actually have to take it. So I was able to go straight through and start taking classes as a freshman, which was super nice. You just needed to maintain a certain GPA. So I highly recommend looking into those sorts of opportunities if you're still able to. But outside, I'm PT. I have three brothers, grew up playing sports. Like a lot of people who go into PT school, I was kind of riddled with injuries. Broke my leg, wrist, collarbone, had a stress fracture in my foot, surgery on my back, surgery on my knees. And this was all before I was like a sophomore in high school. So
Wow.
I had a lot of experience with PTs. Some were great, some were not great.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of exposure to the field and kind of recognized that it was really a unique profession where if I was able to make a difference in the lives of someone like me, who wasn't sure if I was going to be healthy in the long term,
Mhm.
that would be something that would be pretty cool. So that's kind of my journey from uh, PT standpoint, or at least how I got into it. And then after graduation, I did a couple additional learning opportunities. So I did a strength conditioning internship at Champion PT and Performance in Boston, which was amazing to work with high level athletes.
Wow.
And then I did an orthopedic residency in Houston, Texas, where I
Wow.
worked in the safety net hospital system. So we worked with
Wow.
like Spanish speaking patients, people without insurance. So that was really cool as well. And now I'm doing travel therapy in Hawaii. So that's been amazing. And then outside of PT, I like to do a lot of endurance training. We were just talking about this beforehand. I've tried to train for marathons in the past, but had some injuries. So trying to stay healthy throughout that. And then I also enjoy going to concerts, music festivals, traveling.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of just a little bit about me and who I am.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you've had a whole bunch of experiences like in the time that you've from like before PT school and after. What stands out to me
Mhm.
most is like just the variety of experiences you've had and perspectives, and I think that's going to be super helpful for the PT students listening to this.
Yeah, I think that's something that was really important to me, even in PT school, is like, how do I set myself up for success to be able to kind of create my own lane or see what sorts of opportunities are out there? So
Mhm.
during PT school, I was reaching out to all sorts of PTs, whether it was on
Mhm.
Instagram. I mean, it's so easy just to send out a DM, and the
Yeah.
worst anyone can ever say is no.
Yeah.
So I was firing off DMs daily. I had a
Yeah.
podcast for a little while where I would interview PTs who I thought were doing cool things.
Yeah.
And really, that just carried over to even now. It's like if I could collect as much information about different things happening within the field and
Mhm.
sharing those with other people, like we'll start to realize that the DPT is a really cool degree and there's a lot of different ways you can use it. Like if you want to have a clinic job, that's fantastic. But if you want to do other
Mhm.
things too, like there's other options out there. So I always encourage people to, look around, reach out, gather information, and kind of make the decision that's best for you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think I remember listening to some episodes from your podcast way back in the day, not way back in the day, but like a couple of years ago. Is
Yeah.
there anything like what's the biggest takeaway you had from filming the podcast and meeting all the people that you met?
I think overall for me, it was just confidence in reaching out to people, to be
Mhm.
honest, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of PT students think that, maybe they're going to be annoying or people don't want to provide information or everyone's kind of doing their own thing. But really, it seems like it's the people within the field who are doing something that's unique or different, want to get it out there that,
Mhm.
you can be doing this. So I would say it just really opened my mind to all the different possibilities within the field because I think oftentimes the opportunities or things that you end up doing are a direct result of what you're exposed to. So if you see that something's possible, it's a lot easier to do it. I always think about when they talk about how the mile time, like everyone was trying to beat 4 minutes. No
Mhm.
one did it for the longest period of time. Then once someone ran 4 minutes, there was like 30 people who ran 4 minutes,
Yeah.
a month later or something. So it's just exposing yourself to what those different opportunities are and realizing what's possible.
Yeah. And I think now with social media too, that really expands it. I think social media
Hmm.
was a big thing like when I was in school, but it's getting even bigger now. And it's cool to see all the opportunities PT students are taking advantage of.
For sure.
In terms of In your experience, did PT school come easy, or how was your journey from year one to year three in school?
So school, I would say never came particularly easy to me. It was always something where I felt like I was working extremely hard compared to my peers. Like I'd look around and it's like some people I was like, do you guys even study or like what's
Mhm.
going on? So
Mhm.
I felt like I had a little bit of chip on my shoulder with school. Um, I always did well in high school, but then once we transitioned to college and then even PT school, it wasn't a situation where you could like study, like
Mhm.
just keep on memorizing information more and
Mhm.
more and more. You had to actually start to tie things together. And it took me a while to realize that. So my first year of PT school was a lot of just like trying to force memory. And
Mhm.
I realized the ways I was studying just were not working. So I kind of transitioned a lot more to group studying. I had one friend or classmate PT school who I was pretty close with, and we would start talking through concepts. And after we got to that point where I was actually talking, applying, practicing with someone else, that's where things got a little bit easier. But I still had my share of struggles, and uh, I went on to I took a couple different exams throughout PT school. Like I took the CSCS, which is the
Okay.
Certified Strength Conditioning exam. Took me three times to pass it.
That's a
So.
tough one,
I,
yeah.
yeah, so I failed the practical or applied portion twice, and every single time I failed, it was like, is it even worth going back and retaking? Like, I just had this
Mhm.
identity of myself that I was not a good test taker, and I think I leaned on that for a while.
Mhm.
And then even with the NPTE, I didn't pass the first time. That was gut wrenching because I think I missed by like 4 points or something.
Mhm.
Um, so no, school did not always come easy, but I continued to persevere through some of those challenges. Ended up passing both exams. And I would just say to anyone who's struggling with test taking in PT school, look for alternative strategies in terms of studying, trying to figure out like what's not working. A book that was helpful for me is called Make It Stick: The Science of Successful Learning. I
Mhm.
read that during my residency year, and I felt like that was really, really helpful just in terms of figuring out like what scientifically works while studying, what sorts of things you can apply to how you already study.
Mhm.
And so people ask, like, what can I do to prepare for PT school? I would say don't focus so much on like gathering more information, learning more things about PT, like content wise, because all that's going to come, but spend more time thinking about things like how do you study? Like, what do you want to get out of the field? Some more of those questions that maybe you won't have as much time to adjust on the fly once you're actually on a program.
Yeah. I love that response. And I think that'd be super helpful because I know it's a lot of students kind of struggle silently. I know I was one of those where you think
Mhm.
everybody else has it figured out, so you try to figure it out on your own. And it sounds like you were very adaptable and able to, like you said, with the group studying and lean on your classmates as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting too, because when you are in PT school, you'll realize that you'll have friends who are really good at one subject, friends who are good at another.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And so kind of leaning on people's different strengths as well as your own to kind of supplement your journey, I guess.
Yeah. From if you had to go back to when you graduated PT school, your first year,
Mhm.
what would you say is the biggest mistake that you made and something that you wish you would have known when you were walking across the stage at graduation?
Oh, that's a good question. Mistake I made. I would say a couple different things. The first, I think I was really, really aggressive with exercise dosing. Like, I just did
Mhm.
not want to be the PT who was not challenging patients enough. So I
Mhm.
think I came out of the gates firing and really tried to progress everyone super quickly. In
Mhm.
the process, I realized I probably made a lot of people worse in terms of like acute injuries pushing too quickly.
Mhm.
The first couple months, so just recognizing that, being able to adapt. And I think the other thing too is just being a little bit too hard on myself, expecting me to have like perfect progressions of therapy for everyone that I worked with, and realizing that, that's just not realistic. There's so many additional variables when
Yeah.
working with patients, and just you have to give yourself grace and you have to understand different personalities, different patient archetypes.
Mhm.
Um, and some of that just takes time. And I think just with the field of physical therapy in general, it's not something that you can get really good at overnight. It's
Mhm.
something that takes a lot of time, a lot of education, a lot of learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think just recognizing that earlier on and having a little bit more patience with myself.
Yeah. That's really good advice. And I think I can definitely relate to the being hard on yourself, especially going like graduating right out of school. You don't have as much contacts with personalities and just different patient populations. You get
Hmm.
a lot more architects, like you said. Even just with a year of experience, I just feel so much better. That first year is honestly pretty tough in terms of like just getting the experience, getting the reps in.
Yeah, and even just managing the clinic too, like the different flows, of patients coming in and out, balancing documentation, balancing your personal life, trying to
Hmm.
figure out how those pieces fit together.
Yeah. I think something that I can speak from my experience too is I made my life too much about PT.
Hmm.
And then I just feel like I kind of got burned out a little bit from that because I also have some like endeavors with PT students as well. So everything just felt like PT the first year, and it can be very exciting when you're graduating. Like you just want to do PT, but also that balance to things outside of PT is something I want to work on too.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's this idea, it's called sustainable pace. It's how you can
Hmm.
continue to progress in a positive way, but at a pace where you don't burn out. So I think
Hmm.
for everyone, it's really important to find like what does that sustainable pace look like for you? Because for me, can very much relate to I was go, 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 kind of gunning within the field. And if you're not careful, it is very easy to burn yourself out. So making sure that you have other things you can fall back on, other pieces of your identity outside of being a PT, like all that is
Yeah.
just as important as clinical performance if you want to have, a fulfilling career long term.
Yeah. I completely agree. In terms of your experience with the orthopedic residency, how do you feel like that set the foundation for your career when you got out of school to now?
I think it did a couple things. I think number one, like everyone looks for mentorship after graduation. They're kind of worried about, am I going to get enough guidance as I move throughout this first chapter? I had more mentorship in that one year than I could ever hope to have in my entire life, I think.
Nice, nice.
Because I think we had I want to say 5 or 6 different mentors over the course of the
Um,
year, and there was a lot of days where you're sitting there with a highly, specialized clinician who's watching, grading all your sessions. You're talking about what went well, what didn't go well. So it's a constant feedback loop for the course of the year.
mhm,
So then it kind of turns into something where you're constantly thinking about why you're doing what you're doing, what the next best option is within session.
mhm,
It was a little bit annoying at first, but I'd say overall it kind of just changed the way that I think during sessions because every single thing I do, it's like, okay, why are you doing this? Why does this make sense?
mhm,
Um, so it really set the foundation for just how I think and how I clinically reason. And
mhm,
then I think more importantly for me, it exposed different interests because during your residency year, you have the opportunity to research, you have the opportunity to teach, you have patient care. Patient care is not necessarily at the forefront. I think I was only treating probably between 20 and 30 hours most weeks.
nice.
The other 10 hours were for like additional learning activities.
Oh, wow.
And I think what I realized is I really, really enjoy teaching. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if I didn't go straight into residency. So I was lecturing at different universities, working with students
Nice.
in labs every week. And that was something I really enjoyed and wouldn't have necessarily found out or had the opportunity to do if it wasn't for the residency year. So I think just
Yeah,
learning more what some of my interests are within the field and then also just kind of how I think about patient care and things like that. All the orthopedic knowledge is great and things like that. We spent a lot of time studying the
yeah,
textbook, don't get me wrong, but I think it was some of those other pieces that I enjoyed or more beneficial to me.
yeah. That's cool. I honestly didn't even think about, I honestly thought residency was all about clinical, like patient care. So
Mhm.
that's cool that you're able to do things outside of that.
Yeah, everyone's a little bit different in terms of what they focus on.
Hmm.
Um, there's several different pillars. I'm going to butcher them now, but I think it's mentorship education, and I don't remember I don't remember what the third one is, or every
Yeah,
program varies a little bit. But every program leans more in one direction. Mine was fairly balanced, so I got a little bit of each.
nice,
But yeah.
nice. In terms of advice for students going into clinical rotations, do you have any advice for like students trying to build rapport with patients and just get them to buy into working with a student? I know that's a common thing that students go through is they're a student, but sometimes patients don't always want to work with students. Do you have any advice for
Yeah.
navigating that?
I think the biggest thing, honestly, is just making sure that everyone knows who you are.
Hmm.
Um, going to a new clinical, like you're seeing so many different faces. It could be you're meeting 20, 30, 40 people that first week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the easiest thing to do is just like go around and start introducing yourself. So if it's something where patients are warming up or patients are moving around the clinic, you can stop over and just say, "Hey, just want to let you know my name's John. I'm
Yeah.
a new student here." Or kind of just introduce who you are, what you do.
Yeah.
And then, ask them a little bit about what's going on. The more people can get familiar with seeing your face, knowing who you are, the
Hmm.
more likely they are to let you work with them later on, compared to
Yeah.
if it's 2, 3 weeks down the line and they've seen you kind of
Right.
walking around the clinic, but they don't know who you are, they don't know why you're there, and then all of a sudden you're starting to work with them. Like
Hmm.
that's a much lower level of confidence
Right.
compared to if you're conversing with them or they kind of have an idea of what your role is in the clinic. So I'd say that's a big one. Another big one I really emphasize is making sure that you're having a conversation with your CI about how you're being introduced.
Hmm.
So there's a totally different atmosphere that's set if you're working with a patient comes back and your CI says like, "This is John. He's kind of going to be hanging out with us today. He might be jumping in here or there." Compared to if your CI says something like, "This is John. He's a doctor of physical therapy student. He's going to be graduating in a couple months and doing the same job I'm doing. He's going to
Hmm.
be offering different insight, practicing different techniques." Like, do you see where it's just a totally different level of
Yeah.
respect and kind of raises you up so you guys are on the same playing field compared to
Yeah.
almost that you're observing or don't have a whole lot to offer and might be contributing at some point.
Yeah. I would be writing
And
that
so,
down if I was a student. That's very helpful.
yeah. But I don't know. The tough part with that is some CIs are great at that. Some CIs don't maybe emphasize as much, but it is a
Yeah.
conversation that you can drive as a student, I would say. So kind
Right.
of knowing what to ask and knowing what conversations to have with your CI, especially if they haven't had
Exactly.
students before,
Exactly.
that can be helpful too. Just different things to bring up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's also interesting, like how it's setting dependent. Like if you're in acute care versus if you're an outpatient, it's a little bit different. But I think just having
Hmm.
that trust and support is the biggest thing with patients.
For sure.
Kind of pivoting a little bit more to like making the most of the degree. From
Mhm.
your perspective now as a travel PT working in home health, do you think it's feasible for PT, like new grad PTs to jump into both of those settings? I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Sure. So this question is definitely a little bit more controversial, but I don't feel like it needs to be.
Yeah.
I'll always tell students if you pass the NPT, you can do whatever you want.
Mhm.
I mean, you're safe to practice. You can choose whatever route you want. It's just what that looks like might be a little bit different. So for my specific journey, I did the residency program as hospital-based outpatient, and
Mhm.
that was a year. And then after that, I went straight into home health.
Mhm.
If you go straight into home health, there's a little bit of a learning curve. So I know not
Yeah.
many people who have home health clinicals,
Mhm.
um, and there's just different things in terms of like management that you'll need to get comfortable with pretty quickly. So a lot of that's maintaining your schedule, being comfortable organizing some of those pieces. There's a lot more primary care
Mhm.
um, components to home health. Like you have to know when to call the fire department, send someone to the emergency room.
Mhm.
So if you're confident or comfortable making those decisions, like it's not a big deal. Like those things happen maybe once a month.
Mhm.
So it's not like it's something that's happening every single day, but
Yeah.
you could be in some really tough situations and
Yeah.
uncomfortable positions.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not to say you can't do it, but I think that I think for me, it probably took 3 to 4 months before I was really comfortable in home health,
Mhm.
just because there are so many changes. But no matter what you do after graduation, there's going to be that adjustment period. So it's just like
Yeah.
choose your struggle type of deal.
Yeah.
And then I would also say just kind of know what you might potentially be sacrificing if you do go into home health, such as maybe some of your orthopedic skills might get a little bit rusty.
Mhm.
So just figuring out like what some of your long-term goals are if you want to bounce between settings, what that might look
Mhm.
like. That's for home health. And then for travel PT, a lot of people will say like, oh, like I'm not sure if I'm going to get enough mentorship, which is totally valid. But if you are, I guess in any setting, just thinking about like what kind of mentorship are you actually looking for? Are you looking for someone like in person where you can practice hands-on skills? Are you looking for talking through different pieces with clinical reasoning? Because some of those mentorship pieces you can find online, you can find with podcasts. Like there's
Yeah.
so many resources online that
Yeah.
I think
That's hard.
sometimes I think you can create your own mentorship path that's a lot better than what you might be getting from a clinic.
Hmm.
And if you, this is just kind of a tangent, but if you are offered mentorship, always ask, is it structured mentorship or is it unstructured mentorship? Because
Hmm.
unstructured mentorship would be, oh, like maybe we can practice things here and there. Structured mentorship would be, okay, we're going to meet every single week this time, and we're going to go over, these skills or questions you have,
Yeah.
because a lot of jobs will kind of dangle this idea of mentorship in front of you, but when
Hmm.
push comes to
Yeah.
shove, there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot of mentorship.
Yeah.
Um, so travel PT is going to be a little bit easier to get into as a new grad. Just be mindful of what mentorship might look like, and then also make sure that you're really heavily vetting that first contract. I was
Hmm.
talking to someone last week who recommended if you do a first contract, maybe instead of the typical 13 weeks, you can do something where it's 26 weeks or a little bit
Hmm.
longer. And
Yeah.
just so you can get more comfortable in the clinic for that first rotation and not, or for that first, yeah, for that first contract. So you're
Yeah.
not bouncing around and having so much change as
Hmm.
a new grad right away.
Yeah.
So just
I
different things to think about.
yeah, I got a clap for that one. I agree to all of that to a T. And like for travel therapy too, it really depends on what you're comfortable with. I know some new grads will want more of like an internal travel company because they have more
Mhm.
structured mentorship. Like I can think of probably three bigger corporate clinics, but then they also have the mentorship component too, versus something that was important to me was like being in a one-on-one clinic. So that's something I
Yeah.
prioritized right out of school. And I feel like that just gave me more time to think through things clinically. So it really depends on what you're looking for specifically.
Yeah. And I don't know a whole lot, to be honest, about like local contracts versus I've only done non-local contracts. So that could be another option too if you wanted to, stay closer to home or
Mhm.
just other logistical pieces there.
Yeah. And this next theme is going to be the power of the pivot and versatility in the field.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who's currently trying to change their situation, whether it's from a burnout perspective, they just want a change in scenery? How would you advise them to just how to change their situation?
I think the first step is kind of recognizing you're not in a good situation or you are
Mhm.
ready for change and that's okay. It could be something where either you've outgrown your current role, you're not feeling challenged anymore, you don't feel room for further growth. It doesn't really matter what the reason is, but just recognizing why you're in the position you're in so that you can correct it moving forward, looking for your next position. I've gone through burnout, I'm going to say two separate times. The first was immediately after the residency program.
Mhm.
It was so much studying, so much scrutiny with mentorship, just a lot of
Yeah.
brain power. So I just
Yeah.
needed a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
So I took, I think, a couple weeks off before my first job, which was a really nice reset.
Yeah.
And then the second time I went through burnout was after 2 years of home health. I just got to a
Mhm.
point where I was working on a pay per pay per patient visit or
Mhm.
schedule. So if you see more patients, you get compensated more.
Mhm.
And I was kind of working myself into the ground for 2 years, and
Yeah.
I just reached a point where I was like, I need a break. So I took a month off and actually took a backpacking trip across Asia, which was
Nice.
fantastic. I
Nice.
came back, I felt super recharged, ready for more patient care.
Yeah.
So I recognize that's probably not something where I can continue to, take a month off at a time to go backpacking, but just
Mhm.
building in like smaller pieces to reset, even if
Mhm.
it's just a weekend trip or prioritizing something that you like throughout the week, having
Mhm.
those other pieces built in to your week and identity, I think will help a lot just in terms of burnout. But if you are looking for a new role, um, I would say just kind of write down a list of pros and cons from the previous jobs. If you've only had one, you can always look back on clinical rotations, but try and figure out, what made those jobs that you really liked or those rotations that you really liked. Like, what was it about them? Was it the people? Was it the patient population? Was it your schedule? All those pieces matter. And
Mhm.
if you can find a setting moving forward that hits on more of those pieces, maybe you'll be in a little bit better um, position or situation, but don't be afraid to, pivot settings, because the worst that happens is, you don't like the new role, you don't like the new job, you can always go back to what you're doing before. So really, as physical therapists, we have one of the best jobs in terms of being able to take risks, because if something doesn't work out, you're always going to have a job. You're always going to be in demand and
Yeah.
always be able to find somewhere that you can work. So I would
Yeah.
say to any student who wants to try something, you can try something for a couple months. If it doesn't work out, you've got something you can always fall back on.
Exactly. I think the best way to like summarize that is like the worst thing that can happen is you go back to what you were doing before, change it up a little bit, but there's so much demand these days that it's so much opportunity.
Exactly. Mhm.
And thank you so much, John, for taking time for this. If students want to connect with you online, is there a website or just an email address, or where can they find you on TikTok?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my primary focus right now is I have a online educational company. It's called the Pocket CI. So, on all social media, it's Instagram, TikTok, at the Pocket CI. Post lots of different resources for students on clinical rotations. So, if you're headed into a rotation, want more information about the field, or just information about career development, I post videos just about every day, and then I've also got other resources that you can look into. You can always DM me, ask questions. Always happy to hear what you're working on, what you're thinking about, and just provide different resources and insight. Because, like I said, I've tried a lot of different things in the field, haven't
Mhm.
necessarily been successful in all of them, but I
Yeah,
at least feel like I've got a pretty comprehensive view of what this field is and
yeah,
love to offer insight regarding it. So, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and
yeah,
hopefully, your students get a lot of value out of this.
yeah. Thank you.